out is 420 Army. It's another Outlast character lore video that I'm remastering from the Outlast character lore series that about a year ago. This one is Chris Walker. Again, because the original had some stuff that's outdated, so I'm just remastering it to fix all the outdated stuff. So, enjoy. Chris L. Walker was born 1979 and later became a military officer that was stationed in Hatton, Texas after returning from Afghanistan. Chris even became an employee for the Murkoff Corporation in their hardline security department. He was also nicknamed Strong Fat by his colleagues, which he hated said name. After getting his Murkoff job, he worked as a surveillance camera person who watched over therapy sessions. Chris was a gangster though, and even killed 3 inmates by ripping their heads off because he was extraordinarily strong. 2 Murkoff detectives named Paul Marion and Pauline Glick came across the bodies, and Chris talked with them while showing them footage. The detectives eventually realized that Chris was the culprit after they realized his monitor room was completely trashed, and he went after a 4th person. The 2 detectives headed to Chris's house and broke inside, where they found the coolers and even a stuffed pig on Chris's bed. They waited for Chris to come home, and when he did, he attacked them before being shot several times, which he survived and then knocked out after being hit by a car and flying into a rock. Chris was ultimately fired from his position and was admitted to the just reopened Mount Massive Asylum for experimentation. Chris was kept in the asylum's male ward during his first few months at the asylum, and even began consultations for the morphogenic engine program on January 28, 2011. During Chris's time at the asylum, he carved a 3rd eye on his forehead to allow for truer vision, and he was later moved to the asylum's prison block, as well as being fashioned in chain restraints after he removed his lips and nose from extreme anxiety. In October of 2012, the Pauls who had caught him came to visit the asylum and noticed Chris had been turned into a beast from the experiments that were performed on him. Chris was also given large combat boots and long inmate pants to wear. He even had a strap on his cheeks to make him sneer, which later merged with his skin. The morphogenic engine also gave him cataracts in his eyes. On May 28, 2013, Chris had another run in the morphogenic engine where it was discovered he had light to medium bronchial accumulation, and he began to breathe heavily from it. They were also unable to proceed past stage 3 of the hormone schedule. September 17, 2013, a security guard came to visit Chris in Block D and began to ask him a series of questions. When Chris revealed he managed to somehow pick the lock to his cell and even tugged at his chains so hard they broke, and he even tied the guard in them while he killed a ton of people and even got covered in blood from the process. Also, a few other patients managed to escape. Chris wrapped the chains around his ankles and wrists and threw the guard into a door. He then entered the room and began to chase Waylon Park down several hallways until Waylon squeezed through a gap. But Chris eventually caught up to Waylon and chased him down a dark corridor without realizing he had jumped out of a window and ran into the male ward. Chris patrolled there for a while before heading to the administration block. And upon reaching the admin block, he realized a Murkoff tactical team had been sent to secure the asylum, but Chris managed to take on the soldiers and rip their heads off, also impaling the team leader Stevenson on an iron pole and stacking said heads on the shelves. Chris then headed to room A207 and took 2 patients hiding there, with one escaping and running into the prison block. Chris then headed to room A205 and eventually spotted Miles Upshur, a journalist who came to the asylum when he threw out of a window into the lobby. Chris later jumped through the broken window when he saw Miles gone and headed to the security room to look for him. He had no luck and headed to room A125 where he killed a patient who was in there. After a while, Chris left the room and spotted Martin Archambaud carrying Miles and followed them from a distance. However, he lost sight of them once they got into the prison block, and Chris turned the whole prison upside down looking for Miles. Chris returned to the cell where he broke himself out and was confronted by a security guard who he decapitated, headed into the showers and up the second level of Block D. An airlock opened and Chris walked inside to see Miles in the control room, so he broke through the glass in order to reach him. Said airlock exploded and sent Miles flying out of a window, but Chris jumped to that level to look for him and Miles squeezed through a gap to escape him. Chris later headed to the sewers to track down Miles, but Miles drained a ladder to climb down. Chris, however, encountered Miles again in a flooded room where Miles used another ladder to escape. Chris headed to the mail ward and stalked Miles in there as he was getting sprinklers ready, and then outside in the courtyard where Chris was patrolling and even came close to catching Miles, but he was able to go through a small hole too big for Chris to fit through. Chris then headed to the admin block and went to use the washroom at the end of the hallway from the female ward. Once he finished, he began to look around the other rooms in the hallway, not noticing that Miles snuck past him to get to the chapel. Chris later headed to the third floor and began chasing Miles back to the elevator, which took him to the underground lab. Chris called the elevator to get him and he headed into the lab too. Once in the lab, he began to scan the rooms until the doors in front of him opened and he saw Miles, who he grabbed and was about to kill, but the wall rider began slamming him into the walls. Chris ended up meekly choking and yelling until the wall rider cheese-grated him in a vent, killing him, leaving behind a huge pile of blood and guts. Some evidence of Chris was recorded and leaked Murkoff footage in their exposed illegal experiments.